Welcome to Faith Talks Wood Podcast. I'm Will from Fly Woodworks.
And I'm Tom from Mountain Valley Maker.
And we're a podcast that talks about a little bit of everything. And so, Tom, in Pennsylvania right now, on Saturday, it was 45 degrees and raining. Yep. And today it was 85 degrees. So it's just been I think that the summer or the winter or the spring or whatever is over for the most part, but farming season is in full swing. I can't go to work or come home without being behind a combine or somebody disking a field or, whatever. I guess right now they'd be doing disking until first cut for hay has already happened. And so it's just been busy around here because I live in farming Amish country and they make it happen. Funny enough, the Amish, a lot of them, they don't have electric or anything like that, but they do have tractors. So it's kind of I don't know, possibly northwest of us, there might be some old order that are still using horses and stuff, but a lot of those guys are, they don't have electricity or anything in their house, but they still have tractors and, they'll run electricity in their barn by using a diesel engine to run a generator. So, yeah,
that makes no sense at all.
I don't know. And it's all in the bishop and the order of Amish that you're part of. I mean, a lot of them are riding electric bikes around us, right? So they'll go zipping by the house at 40 mile an hour on an electric bike. I've seen that they pull the kid puller things, you have on the back of a bicycle, and they'll just do all kinds of stuff. But yeah, farming season is in full swing, and we are getting ready. I think tomorrow we're going to plant our garden. So first time ever doing a garden. Not sure what to expect. When we're trying a little bit of everything, so I'm not sure if that's going to be a detriment to our garden or not. But I think, and you tell me if we're crazy, I think we've got peppers, green peppers. We've got corn, tomatoes. We've got, what else did my wife do? Oh, green beans. There's something else. So anyways, I don't know how it's going to turn out, but we're going to give it a try.
The beautiful thing about gardening is if you put a seed in the ground or a plant in the ground and it grows and it feeds your family, it's a win. If it dies, you didn't hurt anybody. It's not like building a skyscraper where if you mess up, it falls over and kills somebody. You know what I mean?
Right.
Worst case scenario. So we've got, I was out weeding my pumpkin and corn patch, and I've got like 60 pumpkin plants that have already come up, and
a
couple hundred corn plants that have already come up. My wife's got peppers, tomatoes, and a few melons and stuff, and we'll be planting green beans and okra. And
I bet you my neighbors do a really big garden, but their garden is different. They don't do like a big garden. They'll do one row of till and plant, and then do another row of till and plant. So they don't do like a garden where it's, your traditional. They've just got rows, and then they plant. And I bet you I went past there, and they're older. I think they're in their early 80s, maybe late 70s, early 80s. They're pretty active. I bet you he's got 40 tomato plants, if not more.
Oh yeah.
I'm like, what? So what happens is
can it?
No, they'll bring it over to us.
I bet you the older people can some.
Oh yeah, my mother-in-law does. She cans everything. She'll make sauces and salsa and all kinds of stuff. But yeah, they'll bring over a whole thing of tomatoes to us, and their tomatoes are legit. They'll be like this big.
Oh yeah.
So we're gonna try our own stuff this year. I think my wife and I have been talking about putting out a roadside stand because we've got, I bet you I I bet it's a 40-foot patch of black raspberries. And black raspberries, we like them, we eat them, but people are always after them around here. And so my wife's like, if you could build a little roadside stand and then we can put them out there for sale or something. I'm like, that's fine. So we've got blackberries and black raspberries and blueberries. And then we've got Duchess of Oldenburg apples, which is, if you've ever looked them up, it's a really, it's an old apple. Like, it's not like Gala or whatever. It's like I don't know. But they're smaller, but they're really good for pies and canning and doing like sauce and stuff. And so she wants to put all that stuff out for sale. I don't know, we'll see. So
yeah, and that doesn't hurt to try.
No, I'll just need some wood, and I've got the metal for the roof and all the hardware for the roof. So, and I've got the sheathing for the roof. I've got an extra piece of seat, because if it's just like a little, 4x4 little stand, and I've got enough stuff to do. Yeah. So I don't know. We'll see.
Yep. Very cool.
So we got about a month, and black raspberries will be in full swing. And it's one of those, you go out every night and you pick a bucket full of them.
Man,
it's insane.
I love them. I wish we had them.
Yeah. So, anywho, before we get into today's Bible talk, just want to say thank you to the Patreon supporters. You guys are awesome. If you want to support us on Patreon, you can do so at patreon.com/Faith Talks Wood. If you would like to give us a 5-star review on Apple, and Spotify has a rating system now too. So you can get on Spotify, which is what I use, and give us a 5-star on there. That'd be we'd really appreciate that. And then if you want some sanding equipment, either sanders or sandpaper, go over to surfprepsanding.com. Use code FAITH, get 10% off. Helps the podcast out a little bit. Without further ado, what you got on your mind today, Tom?
Well, I think I mentioned it that a couple weeks ago, I went to the local water store, walked in, there was a gentleman in front of me, turned around, said, "Man, you look familiar." And I was like, "Nah, I just moved here 3 years ago, and I'm not from here." And he was like, "Where's your accent from?" And I said, "I'm from the Carolinas. I grew up in South Carolina, went to Air Force out of high school, went to Germany for a couple of years, and then I ended up back in North Carolina, where I stayed for 30 years. So pretty much my whole life, I've been in North and South Carolina." And he was like, "Where were you stationed at in Germany?" I said, "Bitburg, before it was closed." And he said, "And you were in the singles group, and I remember you rode a motorcycle." And I looked at him strange. I'm like, "How did you know that?" And he goes, "I'm Sam Cathy." And so it was a friend of mine that I was stationed with in Bitburg, Germany, way back, like over 30 years ago. And he just happens to move here to the Grand Valley about 10 years ago, pastor of a church down in Fruita, Colorado, Monument View Bible Church. And we happened to end up, I don't think by coincidence, in the water store at the exact same time. And he married another friend of mine that we were stationed with in Germany. And long story short, he ended up coming by the house. We hung out and chit-chatted, caught up on old times. And then in the conversation, he had mentioned to me that he was going to be teaching up at a Bible camp this past weekend. And literally over the weekend, I was sitting there, man, how nice would it be to get away and just go up and camp with the guys and study the Word for the weekend. And I didn't want to call and invite myself, but I prayed about it, and I was like, "Lord, I don't want to invite myself, but if you want me to go, have Sam reach out and invite me." Literally the next morning, Sam sent me a text, man, said, "I know it's last minute, but we've got some open spots, and love to have you come up if you're open this weekend." And so I spent the last weekend up at Twin Peaks Bible Camp, and just great weekend. Sam was doing the teaching. We had 4 Bible sessions, some time to go fishing, caught me a few trout, got a few on the hook that I didn't pull in, and because I'm not a master fisherman, but just an amazing weekend. But in the teaching, Sam taught something that just really stood out and kind of slapped me in the face, to be honest with you. It was like, So I try to memorize a new verse every couple of weeks, and just kind of keep, adding to the scripture that I've got stored up in my heart. And the verse that I have been memorizing is in Colossians 4, down in 5 and 6, and it says, "Live wisely among those who are not believers, and make the most of every opportunity. Let your conversation be gracious and attractive, so that you will have the right response for everyone." And God is just kind of keeps bringing up thing and thing again about having the right response for everyone, no matter what the situation. And so I'm going to read a little bit more there of Colossians today, and then I'll kind of share what Sam had taught this weekend that just made me go, man, am I making the most of every opportunity? And, I've been a believer since I was a teenager. I've been walking with Jesus now for about 12 years. When I say walking, like truly chasing after a relationship with Jesus. But I've still got a long way to go, man. Like, I am so far from perfection that it's not attainable, first of all, because Jesus is the only one that's perfect. I've been cleansed by his blood. Praise God. I don't have to be perfect, but I'm still trying to improve every day. And it just seems like every day it's like one other thing where it's like God's saying, all right, you need to improve right here. And so I'm going to read in Colossians chapter 4, verse 2 through 6 there. It says, "Devote yourselves to prayer with an alert mind and a thankful heart. Pray for us too, that God will give us many opportunities to speak about his mysterious plan concerning Christ. That is why I'm in here in chains. Pray that I will proclaim this message as clearly as I should. Live wisely among those who are not believers, and make the most of every opportunity. Let your conversation be gracious and attractive, so that you will have the right response for everyone." And so the first part of this passage, I think, is something we're all chasing after. Devote yourselves to prayer with an alert mind and a thankful heart. And I will say that I pray on a daily basis. So that's a good thing, right? I'm pursuing Jesus. I have a habit of praying every morning and multiple times throughout the day. What am I typically praying for? Praying for my wife, praying for my daughter, praying for me, our finances, that we would be good stewards of what he's given us, that we'd have good health, that he would use me, open doors for me to serve him. I like to say the typical things that most Christians are praying for. I would assume most of you listen to this podcast are praying for your wife, you're praying for your children, you're praying for your finances, et cetera, et cetera. But this weekend, when Sam was teaching, he was teaching on what it meant to be a man. And in the last session, he put up a picture on the screen of Leah Thomas. If all of you haven't been, living on a rock, Leah Thomas is that swimmer that was a man, decided that they couldn't compete against men, so they decided to choose to be a woman and take first place at the national swimming meet, and tried to get in the Olympics, and then the Olympics banned him. But Leah has been all over the news, and I think myself and probably every person listening to this podcast would agree that a man does not belong in women's sports. And so, from my perspective and my habits, I would typically pray for the other girls in the sport, pray that they would be treated fairly, that they would have opportunities. If I'm praying for my daughter, that she would be safe on the field, that she would have the opportunities to, that her hard work would be rewarded. I'm ashamed to say that what Sam put up there after, and he clearly stated the same thing, Leah Thomas does not belong in women's sports. That's pretty obvious. I think we all agree on that. But then he said something that just stood out. How many of you have prayed for Leah Thomas? And guys, I am ashamed to say that I never have. I've never prayed before this weekend until I felt guilty that Leah Thomas would come to know who God created him to be, that he would come to know Jesus Christ. And it really, really convicted me, and it brought me back to this verse. And so this verse that I've been memorizing, kind of the live wisely among those who are not believers and make the most of every opportunity. Let your conversation be gracious and attractive. And I like to kind of call that the water cooler or the coffee pot conversation. You know, when we go to the water cooler at work, obviously I'm self-employed, so I don't do that anymore. But when we're gathered around those public places, are we adapting to the conversation? Because I think if there's a conversation at the water cooler, unless you work at a liberal place, most of it's going to be that Leah Thomas or whatever the topic we happen to be talking about that doesn't align with the Bible, she doesn't or he doesn't belong in women's sports. And it's kind of an angry type conversation. Or are we blending in with that? Because I'm going to be honest, I'm going to fall right in line and with that conversation where I'm saying, hey, man, that dude don't belong in the sports my daughter is playing in. But are we keeping our conversation gracious and attractive? Are we praying for Leah Thomas or whatever the other case might be? And it got me thinking about my prayer life in other areas, because I think it's so easy for us to pray for our spouses and children and our jobs and things. But a few that came up, James 5:16, one of my favorite verses, confess your sins to one another and pray for one another. So talking about our brothers or sisters in Christ, we're getting together and intentionally praying for one another, or saying, hey, man, Will, I am struggling with my conversation at the water cooler. I'm blending in. I need you to pray for me to stand out, or vice versa, whatever you happen to be going through. The second thing, 1 Timothy 2:1-2, I urge that supplications, prayer, intercessions, and thanksgivings may be made for all people, for kings and all who are in high positions. And so if you're a Democrat, are you praying for Donald Trump? If you're a Republican, did you pray for Joe Biden and Nancy Pelosi? I'm going to be honest, I did a lot more complaining about my bank account and my investments and the cost of eggs and groceries than I did praying for Joe Biden. I'm confessing my guilt here. But praying for the leaders of our country, regardless of what your political party happens to be. Another one, Job 42:10, and I just happened to finish reading Job in my daily reading plan, and 42:10 says, and the Lord restored the fortunes of Job when he prayed for his friends. So if you remember, in the book of Job, everything was taken from him, and then he's sitting down having these conversations with his friends, and his friends, of course, are basically blaming him for most of it. But through it all, Job is still glorifying God. And then after all of them basically telling him, it's clearly something you've done wrong, he prays for them. And of course, God ended up restoring. And this is not the prosperity gospel. I'm not telling you to pray for people so that you can get some. It just happened in this instance. But are you praying for your friends? Are you intentionally in your prayer time thinking about people other than you, your spouse, and your kids, people outside of your sphere of influence? And then the last one, the Leah Thomas verse, Matthew 5:44. But I say to you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. This weekend, they had a march up in I think it was Seattle or somewhere where they basically came out and attacked the preacher for preaching. This weekend in Boulder, Colorado, a guy came out and set people on fire because they were marching for Israel. So in those instances, man, I'm ashamed to say that I get on the defensive side versus the prayer side. And so are we praying for our enemies and those that are persecuting us? And man, do I need a lot of improvement in this area. So I'm just here to say so. Yeah, Will, what do you think about prayer and praying on a regular basis outside of what I feel like is kind of normal for us Christians?
Yeah, man, that's good stuff. The whole, when you said whatever her name is, Thomas, whatever.
Yeah, Leah Thomas.
Well, I haven't heard anything about that, so I do live under a rock. I'm one of those that I don't follow anything. We have a newspaper. I don't follow really social media that much. I don't watch news. And so unless I hear about it from somebody at work, or my wife says something to me about it, yeah, I don't know about that kind of stuff. But all that to be said, the idea of praying for those who persecute you or praying for those who are different than you is a hard thing in today's culture. We don't want to pray for those who are different than us because a lot of times we feel convicted that they're in the wrong and we're in the right, whatever that means. When in reality, we're all created in God's image. Now, do I agree with somebody like Leah Thomas? No, not one bit. But to, look down upon that person in a way that degrades them as a human in which God has created them is not what we should do. And praying for them will be hard, but it'll be edifying. It'll make you feel like, oh my goodness, I should do this more often, right? When you were reading the Colossians 4, I was reading along here. I'm not sure what version you were reading out of.
I was in the NLT.
Yeah, okay.
On that particular one, that's what I've been memorizing in.
Yeah. So I've been reading in the Legacy Standard Bible, which is like a New American Standard, very, very word for word, whatever. But it says, devote yourself to prayer, be watchful in it with thanksgiving, praying at the same time for us as well. The word here, watchful, basically what he's saying is, how I interpret this is, devote yourself to prayer and be watchful, meaning that there's an enemy out there. Mm-hmm. You need to watch your back, right? You need to stand guard for the things that the enemy is coming at us with. And so, and the hard thing too is that there's a lot of little things that we don't think about, and they creep in and they influence us in ways that we don't expect. I'll tell you one, on my lunch today, I was watching a YouTuber. Yeah, I really, really appreciate him. His name's Tim Wildsmith. He's does like Bible reviews and stuff like that. And he did a video talking about gender inclusive language within the Bible, and should it be there, should it not be there, that kind of thing. And it's a hard conversation, because when I say that, you immediately go to culture and say gender inclusive. Oh, we got to include everybody, but that's not what it is, right? It's the accurate translation of when Paul says brothers. Sometimes that word is actually used towards a group of people, so brothers and sisters, right? A lot of the translations you read will probably say brothers and sisters and something like that. And so his conclusion, which I agree with, is that it probably is more accurate, but the Greek word for brothers is adelphoi, which means brothers. Now, can it be interpreted as brothers and sisters in certain contexts? Yes, but here's the thing, and here's actually, you might not know this about me. So I watch a lot of YouTube, my lunch break, that kind of stuff, and I'll comment. I'll have very thoughtful comments on stuff that I'm passionate about, and one of the things that I said in the comment is that culture is creeping into Christianity more than we realize, and while maybe, yes, interpreting or translating adelphoi, the Greek word for brothers, as brothers and sisters, is maybe accurate in a context, the only reason that it's being thought of is because culture has creeped in to the translators, to the publishing companies, to the ones who make those decisions. And for decades and decades and decades, it was never questioned. And we have this preconceived notion that people are reading the Bible and they'll come across brothers and they get offended. Oh, it's only talking about men. And I don't think that's the case. I think when people read the Bible, they're not looking at it like that. They're not reading that and saying, "No, it just says brothers here. It's a, masculine only Bible kind of thing." But that's what culture is pushing on academia, on the guys that are translating. All of that to be said, coming back to this, is that sometimes we're not going to agree, right? Sometimes we're not going to agree on something. And sometimes there are things that, whether we like it or not, are creeping in through culture into Christianity. And talking about Leah Thomas is, it's a huge thing, because it's our sexuality and who we are is what God has created us to be, and attacking that at its root is so so like the devil, right? It's such it's a tactic. And just like I was saying with the Bible translation thing, maybe translating it to brothers and sisters is accurate for the context, but the only reason it's there is because, as I believe, is because some of this is starting to creep in from culture. And so we, as it says here in verse 2 of Colossians 4, we need to be watchful. We need to devote ourselves to prayer and be watchful in it with thanksgiving, because there is an enemy out there that is roaring around. And then verse 5 says, walk in wisdom towards outsiders. How hard is it for us to walk in and when it says walk in wisdom, right? It's that idea of the things that we do and say, we need to be mindful of that what we're doing is edifying to God and not to, try to please man. And so, all of this there's so much we could talk about here, and we could probably do a whole hour and a half episode just expositorily breaking down, verses like this. But it's good stuff, man. We need to devote ourselves to prayer, and praying for those who are different, who we don't see eye to eye with, is extremely important.
Amen. Well, man, I know that you said you had been out on the farm some working on the tractor coop. You're not going to want to hear this, but I'm still working on that drainage. So,
sounds like it's a draining project.
Well, it's frustrating because finally I called the engineer that did the plans. And so get this, and I know that my wife is probably looking at me like, oh my God, why didn't we just wait and pay the person? I was number one, trying to get it done sooner because the guy that we were going to hire wasn't available immediately. And two, it saves us some money by me doing it. So it's a blessing. And with my daughter going to college and my car not wanting to operate correctly, yeah, saving some money right now is a big deal. But dude, so I dug the whole trench with the excavator my neighbor loaned me. Praise God for that. You just don't know how thankful I am for that. And then I got down in the trench, staked off, took my laser, shot the grade, and I'm like, everything is not matching up with way they drew it out based on where the grade of the pipe should be, the depth of the trench, the rock pipe, where the pipe should land in the catch basin. I call it catch basin. It's a dry well and everything. So I called the guy and I'm like, look, man, I said, I need to make some adjustments. I want to know what's okay to adjust and what not. And he said, explain to me what? And I said, well, if I put the pipe to arrive in the dry well at the level that your drawings say, and then I shoot the grade that you've allocated up to the northwest corner, and then again over to the northeast corner where all this is going. I said, the pipe's going to be much higher than what it should be, and I'm not going to have room to put the proper amount of rock in above and then around soil. He said, nah, something's wrong. And so he got to looking on it, and the engineer that I paid an enormous amount of money to, when he was doing the math, miscalculated something. So I'm sitting here literally reading the wrong information and trying to follow it. And my wife's looking at me. She's like, I wish I could help, but I don't understand. And I'm like, I'm following everything. I said, this isn't going to work. And so I called and then he looked at it. He told me what I was supposed to be doing. He called me back about 10, 15 minutes later. Tom, I looked at the drawings and I don't know what I did wrong, but somehow I punched the wrong numbers in when I was doing the math calculations. I'm sending you a new drawing with the proper. And so, man, if you knew how much time that I had put into trying to figure out the wrong calculations, it's just so frustrating. So, yeah, I've had a little bit of time in the shop working on my project for Makers for St. Jude, but 90% of it, my time this week, other than I was going for 4 days up to the mountains for the men's retreat, every other ounce of time has been trying to figure out what I thought I was doing wrong by following what I thought was the right instructions, which was the wrong instructions and me doing things right. So, what have you been up to?
Dude, I hate when that happens. I actually have a story of a similar scenario. So at work, I work in IT, and I was doing a migration. I won't get too heady, but I was doing a migration, and I was following the instructions that the vendor gave on how to do the migration properly to a T. This kind of stuff you have to pay attention to because there are little things that you could do wrong. It could mess something up. And so I'm following this thing to a T, and it's not working. I went through this like 6 times. I brought one of my engineers over. I says, hey, help me out here. Am I looking at this wrong? And he looked at it. I said, no, looks like you're doing everything right. And so I finally, I was like, I got to call the company. So I called the company,
Get on the call, really nice guy. And I'm like, hey, here's what's happening. I'm trying to do this and it's doing this. And he's like, that's weird. He's like, I don't know why it would do that. And we got looking at it, and he was really, really good about trying to, and he was going to stay on the phone with me until we got it figured out. Finally, we get to one point, and he's like, are you following the instructions? Well, yeah, I'm following what's on your guys's, how to your instruction, your procedure on how to do this. And so we pull it up, and he's reading through it. He's like, this isn't right. I'm like, are you telling me I just spent half a day messing with this? Is not right? He's like, man, I wrote this procedure, and I know what was in there. Somebody has changed this, and this is a big company. There's thousands of people who work, And he's like, somebody's changed this because there's 2 steps that you missed, but you missed them because they're not in the procedure. I said, oh, well, that would be a problem. So he was really nice, and so we made the changes. Everything started working like it should. And so I understand your frustration when you have the thing in front of you and you're like, I'm following what they gave me. It's not working, right? It's such a frustrating thing. And especially like for me in this field, I'm a professional and I know this stuff and I know how it works. And when it's a vendor, it's another product that I don't necessarily know the mechanics of. I can't really dig into it as much as I would like to, but I understand the layout. And I know you've probably done a lot of this type of stuff, and you're probably like, this doesn't make sense. I'm doing what it says. I'm following it to a T, and this isn't going to work. Yeah, that's frustrating.
Oh man, yeah, because I mean, I've had a business where I built outdoor kitchens and patios, retaining walls, and I've been shooting grade for years. I know how to use the laser. And it's just like, it was so frustrating when he called me back and told me that. I was the same way. I was like, you mean I've spent all this time following your instruction? And he apologized profusely, but I'm like, man, you made me look like an idiot to my wife, because my wife's out here thinking I don't know what I'm doing. And then I told her, and she was like, well, that makes sense. She said, because I knew you had done this type stuff before. It's like...
Yeah.
Anyway,
that's funny. As far as farm stuff, the coop is 95% done. We just have to paint it. I got up on the roof yesterday, got home from work, and we decided to move the podcast back a night, which was fine. And so my wife and I are like, well, we'll spend a little more time outside with the kids because it doesn't get dark here till almost 9:00 or after 9:00 really. And so we're outside, and I looked at my watch and I was like, we got like 15 minutes before we got the kids in. I said, my wife says, hey, I'm gonna go grab the ladder. I'm gonna get on top of the coop, and I'm gonna finish putting the screws into the roof, because I put all the screws that I could reach on the ground into the roof, but I needed to get up on it, and I think I still had probably 50 screws to put in, and it's a pretty big. This thing's just ridiculous, is all I'm saying. And so I got up there and did that, and earlier in the day, right after work, I got the tractor out, and we have this rock garden in the front. Yeah, I call it a rock garden. There's like a rock boulder that's like the size of a, I don't know, almost like a small car. It's like buried halfway in the ground, and there's several rocks around it. At some point, it was a nice thing, and so it was overgrown. We moved there, and the front of it, it's kind of raised up a little bit. And at one point, when we first bought the house, they had railroad ties around it, and then we removed those because they were all rotted away. And my wife says, "Hey, can you take the back blade from the tractor and kind of regrade it, like make it flat so it's not all raised up?" And I've never done that kind of work with a tractor. I mean, I've moved gravel with the back blade and stuff, but I've never and to my surprise, it worked really well. I was kind of surprised at how good a back blade works. I never knew. So did some of that, but yeah, man, just been busy, lots of work, and I'm probably too busy. So podcast tonight, which is normal. And then I've got church board meeting tomorrow night, or like annual meeting. And then my camp board meeting Thursday night, which is almost an hour away. And then my work, they're big on me because I'm in management to be on boards, right? They want my face in the community. They want our logo in the community. They want us out there. And so my son he started going to a private Christian preschool. He'll be going into kindergarten there this fall. And so I inquired the president of the school about joining to become a board member for the school. So yeah, just a lot going on, but I'm trying to balance all the time and all the stuff and do, make sure that when I'm home, I'm present. When I'm at work, I'm efficient, and then all this other stuff. And then my wife and I took over a ministry at the church. And the ministry it's called the BAG program, Bridging a Gap BAG. It got started years ago. And what it is it's we partner with this local school, and we provide non-perishable food on Fridays to students to take home to have food for the weekend. And we provide 94 bags a week. Yeah. It's a pretty depressed area here. And so we, every week we go in, we take the kids with us, and we explain to them, like, we're doing this to help those that don't have as much. And we fill 94 bags. And so my wife and I are, but that's a family ministry for us. It's a behind the scenes. Nobody, sees it at church. They know the program's there, but as most people don't know how it happens. And so I don't know, it's kind of a cool thing, because I would have been one of those kids growing up. I grew up on welfare, my parents, Social Security. And so it means a lot to me, but so we have a lot going on. Just one thing after another, busy, busy, busy. So can't get in trouble that way.
Oh man. I tell you, sometimes it feels like I'd like to just take a break and just take a nap, because it's just,
did I hear that?
Going.
Well, yesterday, so we didn't do the podcast and we moved it to tonight. We put the kids down for bed, and it was just after 9:00, and wife and I looked at each other and we thought, let's go to bed. I went to bed live. Usually I'm an 11 o'clock kind of bed. I'll lay down. I probably fall asleep after I do my reading, 11:30. That's where my body works. But no, last night I was in bed. I was sleeping by 9:30, and it was fantastic.
That's me every night. I typically go to bed at 9:00, and I get up at 4 a.m. But
yeah, not getting up that early.
I tell you though, this weekend going up to the camp, it was kind of, we weren't camping in tents. I wish I had taken my tent and my camp mattress, because it would have been more comfortable. Than they had these bunk beds in there with these, them plastic wrap wannabe mattresses that they throw at every camp. And dude, the first night, if I slept 10 minutes, I'm probably exaggerating. I did not sleep a wink the first night, and I was so tired. On Saturday afternoon, we were having a shooting competition. I was like, man, I went fishing for a little while, caught a few trout, and then I was like, man, I'm gonna lay down and take a nap. I'm exhausted. I slept for like 2 hours, and I slept a little bit better Saturday night, but still not normal. And I came home Sunday afternoon. I was exhausted. I told my wife, I was like, I'm sorry I've been going all weekend, but I got to take a nap. I took like a 2.5 hour nap Sunday afternoon. So,
yeah, those are always nice. I never used to take naps, and I had kids. And there's just something about a Sunday afternoon, kick back on the couch, and just take a snooze, And busy. You volunteer at your church, same with me. I'm there early, and then all the socialization and stuff. But I was gonna tell you, there was something I did this weekend that was the first time I've ever done anything like it. So our church camp, I'm a board member for. We got a donation of $10,000 to put in new bathroom partitions. So the building, the bathhouse, was built 25 years ago, I think. And they were like plywood type laminate. It was like laminate partitions. So it was starting to delaminate and starting to, just really look bad and show age. And so somebody donated for us to put new partitions in throughout the whole bathhouse. And it was this poly stuff, like plastic. It's like solid plastic. And if that stuff wasn't the heaviest stuff I ever lifted in my life, but yeah, it was kind of a fun project. Got to install some poly partition things in the showers and the bath, around the toilets and whatnot. And so that was kind of a fun, not woodworking, it was plastic working, but I used woodworking tools.
Yeah, man. I tell you. Speaking of donations, I'm glad that you just said that. So Adam Aaron, that we had on the podcast, everybody knows he is a full-time missionary, him and his wife, with YWAM. And so God has called them to move from Chicago down to Orlando, Florida area. And they've actually already made the move. But the cost of living where they're at and everything is a little more. And so he reached out to me and asked me about praying for it and praying about it, actually about partnering. But the way they pay their bills is through donations from people around the world, mostly typically from their home church, wherever they're at. So if you're listening to this, Adam at Adams Woodwork, you can reach out to me if you feel like, maybe you can throw $10, $20 a month, whatever, to support a missionary. They're down there. Their whole focus is youth, to build up disciples to go out. And so pray about that. And if you think it's something God's calling you to do, reach out to me. I can send you the link where you can go and either make a one-time donation or a monthly donation, whatever, you feel like God's calling you to do.
Yeah, he had reached out to me as well. It's mission work is an interesting thing because you have to raise your own funds, become sponsored.
Yep.
And that definitely not easy. I know there's some missionaries, our church supports them. There's one that has kind of retired from doing it, but still oversees the mission that she started 20 years ago. And she goes to our church. And so I see it's definitely a hard thing. So yeah, definitely pray about that. If it's something that you want to give to or help, reach out, we'll point you in the right direction. So very good, Tom. Well, I'm going to hit the sack. Got to get up, do breakfast tomorrow morning. So I'll be up about the time you're up. Well, since I'm 2 hours, am I 2 hours ahead? Eastern?
Yeah, so you probably get up the same time I do.
Right. So I get up at 6 and you're getting up at 4, but it's the same time. So that's why you see the podcast on Wednesdays come out.
Yeah.
Is because I have it set for 6 because I figure 6 a.m. people are starting to go to work and commuters and stuff like that. And then any time zone before us, it's even earlier. So.
Yeah. It's funny every now and then, like Everett called me one day. He's, man, I hope it didn't wake you up. I'm like, wake me up, dude. I've been up reading for 2 hours. What are you
Very good.
Yeah.
All right. Well, appreciate you, sir. Until next week, I'm Will from Fly Woodworks.
I'm Tom from Mountain Valley Maker.